Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Because today, we're going to shatter a pretty massive misconception. This idea that ancient automatically means primitive. We're actually traveling back thousands of years to look at a civilization whose urban design and public infrastructure could literally rival some modern cities. It's wild.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the meaning of architecture, classify Indian architecture, and then explore the Harappan city layout, the citadel versus the lower town, their streets and drainage, and finally, their granaries and houses. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The meaning of architecture. To really grasp our ancient past, we've kind of got to think of every physical building as a time capsule, right? Just waiting to be opened. At its root, the word architecture actually comes from the Latin word tecton, which means builder. Now, on the surface, sure, it just refers to the design and construction of buildings. But if we dig a little deeper, we realize that mere construction always hides a profound societal meaning right there in its walls.
I mean, just think about what a single building can tell us. Architecture gives us major clues about a society's religious beliefs, their economic conditions, their social structure, the type of polity or government they had, and of course their level of technological advancement. These ancient bricks aren't just rubble, they are literal data points revealing exactly who these people were. So I definitely want you to keep this in mind as we proceed today.
Section 2. Classifying Indian architecture.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive span of Indian architectural history. Historians generally group it into three broad buckets: ancient, medieval, and modern India. You know, you've got the Delhi Sultanate and Mughal art in the medieval era, and Indo-Gothic styles later on in the modern era. But for us, our focus lies squarely on that very first pillar of ancient India, the Harappan period.
2500 BC. Let's just lean into that time warp contrast for a second. The Harappan, or Indus Valley civilization emerged on the banks of the river Indus in the second half of the 3rd millennium BCE. We are talking over 4,500 years ago, and this society was already spreading across huge chunks of northwestern and western India. Just incredible.
Section 3. Harappan city layouts.
Now, what's really interesting about this town plan is the sheer genius of their binary zoning. The city wasn't just some random, chaotic sprawl of houses. It was actively divided into two very distinct parts. This was a highly intentional, super organized approach to urban living that, honestly, you rarely associate with the ancient world.
Section 4. Citadel versus lower town.
There's a direct physical contrast going on here. On one side, you have the citadel. It was built up on a raised platform, properly fortified with thick walls, and generally smaller in overall size. This was basically the secure hub, housing all the important public buildings like the granaries and public baths. Then on the other side, you've got the lower town. This was positioned down in the lower plains, not fortified at all, but occupying a much larger area. And it contained purely residential buildings for everyday citizens. So the clear social structure at play here is literally baked into the earth.
Section 5. Streets and advanced drainage.
Let's move to and see how this builds out in reality, bridging the gap between the schematic concept of a town plan drawing and the physical reality of these excavated ruins. Because it's one thing to see a sketch, right? It's entirely another to think about actual, perfectly straight stone foundations that have somehow survived for millennia.
So, let me ask you a question. When you think of ancient cities, do you picture, muddy chaos? Or do you picture a perfectly planned 34-foot wide grid that looks exactly like a chessboard? Because the Harappans absolutely built a ladder. Their streets were massive, anywhere from 13 to 34 feet wide. They were completely straight, cutting across each other at perfect right angles, which essentially divided the whole town into regular, highly organized rectangular blocks. It's like a modern downtown.
But the modernity absolutely did not stop at the streets. Think about their brickwork. Every single house in this civilization had its own private drainage and soak pit. And those private pits, they were seamlessly connected to a massive public drainage system built with carefully laid bricks all throughout the main channels.
And I want to highlight an absolutely shocking fact right here. These public channels were properly covered, and they even had manholes placed at regular intervals specifically for cleaning and clearing purposes. No way, right? 4,500 years ago, this civilization was proactively managing public health and urban sanitation. It's just truly staggering when you think about it.
Section 6. Granaries and residential houses.
45.71 meters long.
That is the massive scale of the largest granary discovered in Mohenjo-Daro, which, by the way, was also over 15 meters wide. So we aren't talking about some small little storage shed out back. This was a monumental public building specifically designed to store massive amounts of agricultural buffer stock for the city's citizens.
So why does this matter? Well, because these granaries were essentially their ultimate economic insurance policy. They guaranteed food security for the entire urban population, protecting everybody against things like famine or a bad harvest. In Harappa alone, archaeologists discovered 2 entire rows of 6-room granaries. That's not just a barn, that is an incredibly advanced logistical distribution center.
So, the crucial point is how these citizens actually experience this brilliantly planned city day to day. When we analyze the cross-sections of these Harappan residential houses, it reveals that they were actually building multi-story homes. You can find first-floor storage rooms and then ladders leading right up to second-floor residential areas. It really cements this image of a highly organized, thriving society with dedicated spaces for storage and living, all safely tucked away inside those perfectly grid-planned neighborhoods.
Which brings us to our final thought. If an entire civilization perfected urban planning, built chessboard grid streets, and utilized public health drainage with actual manholes 4,500 years ago, what else has history forgotten? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you found these ancient blueprints as fascinating as I do, and that it leaves you eager to learn even more about our incredible past.